Welcome everybody to this week's edition of TOOP TV, and today we're talking about this magnificent word. And we'll be looking at the we're doing the countdown of the top 6 property sales in the last 12 months, and you'll see some awesome property there. Now, we can't have a show without talking about what's happening in the global financial situation and the impact on you here in Adelaide, South Australia. We'll look at what's happening right today in the marketplace, what we think will happen, and what we think will also happen with interest rates. So stay tuned for that. Tim will be in the studio with me. We're both in the trenches at the moment. We know what's happening and we're live, we're interactive, so get the questions going. We'll answer your questions at the end of the show. So welcome to what a great event. It's the top 6 sales, it's the countdown, and it's just to prove a point there's some really great activity out in the marketplace. Now, joining me here today, we've got Tim Threadgold, who's familiar to everybody, because Tim hijacked my show recently, didn't you, Tim?
Hardly hijacked, but I did pop along occasionally.
Fantastic. Now, Tim, we did promise in the intro that we'd cover off on some market elements that are happening at the moment. Today's front page of the Advertiser, I'll hold that nice and still. For those of you in South Australia, talking about not only the blitz with what's happening in London, and I have my daughter in London at the moment, so she's giving me first-hand rundown on what's happening. But the rough ride in terms of the battlers and the investors in the market and in relation to shares. Now, there's also some breaking news on interest rates. And Tim, what do you know?
Well, what I know at the moment is probably a fraction less than you at the minute, but I'm fascinated to see this juggling of, first of all, interest rates are going to go down. A week later, inflation figures released, they're going up again. And last I heard a day or two ago, potentially a half a point decrease coming again. Right,
well, the breaking news is that having been very involved with financing with a lot of people's different properties and that, the banks have already brought back their interest rates by 0.1% in the one that we had yesterday. And they're predicting do not fix, go variable, and they're looking very much factoring in right across the board that the rates are on the way down.
Interesting, because the 5-year fixed rate is quite close to the variable now, which means that they're not expecting upward movement. So that's interesting.
Now, just for those of you that are interested, we have on Friday, we've got our fireside chat with Mark Lewis. And Mark is obviously Bernie Lewis Home Loans, the largest broker in South Australia. And we'll be talking very specifically about this. There'll be more news by then because we'll be a few more days old in terms of what the banks are up to. As opposed to the Reserve Bank, this is the banks that are lending you the money. Now, the financial situation obviously created some nervousness. I think we've got a 2-speed real estate residential market now. What's happening out there in the fields, in the trenches?
Totally agree. I think breaking even the market into segments, the lower price range seems to be okay. Mid-price range is hard work. Top end, as we will discuss shortly, has been quite strong. Yeah,
well, as recently as last night, there were 3 very large, significant properties in South Australia sold this week. So the sales on that top end property market are strong. And we'll talk about that perhaps a bit further as we go through the program. But let's go and let's get underway with the sold properties and start with number 6 in our lineup.